Hi, everybody. My name is Greg Katz, and welcome to WeRSC's Inside the Trojans Huddle. Inside the Trojans Huddle is a game-like panel discussion with WeRSC columnists and staff writers. We start off with the pregame show. That's the introduction of our panels. So let's meet this week's panelists. Mark Culkin, WeRSC columnist who writes the Monday Morass, Yay or Nay, Sunday Takeaways, in addition to practice reports during the season. Chris Arledge, former William Jewell College DB and team captain, and WeRSC columnist who writes the popular column Musing with Arledge. And as a side note, he is a graduate of USC's law school. A newcomer to the Inside the Trojans Huddle, let's welcome Bruce Bagney, chairman of WeRSC, also known in these parts sometimes as the Godfather. And I'm Greg Katz, WeRSC columnist who writes the obvious, not so obvious, and IMHO Sunday. I'll be your host and moderator for the Inside the Trojans Huddle. Now, first, the latest USC news, and there is breaking news. We are taping on Monday, late Monday. Oklahoma quarterback Caleb Williams announced he's entering the NCAA transfer portal, which means he could end up with Lincoln Riley in Los Angeles and USC. As expected, junior defensive end, outside linebacker Drake Jackson, and junior corner Isaac Taylor Stewart announced over the weekend they're entering the NFL draft, and receiver sophomore Joseph Manjack also announced too he is entering the NCAA transfer portal. It was also reported after the Rose Bowl game that Utah running back coach Kyle McDonald is expected to join Lincoln Riley's 2022 coaching staff. However, earlier in the week, Lincoln Riley lost defensive line coach Jamar Cain to LSU and new Tigers head coach Brian Kelly. Lincoln Riley has yet to officially name any members of his new staff. And former Trojans defensive line coach Vic So'oto has been hired by Colorado as its defensive line coach. And finally, Oklahoma offensive analyst Connor McQueen is expected to join Lincoln Riley's staff as a graduate assistant working with the Trojan quarterbacks. McQueen played for Texas A&M, spent 2 years on the coaching staff at UCLA under Chip Kelly after spending a year as a quality control assistant for Texas A&M. All right, the first quarter, let's talk about Caleb Williams. Panel, your thoughts on Oklahoma quarterback Caleb Williams entering the NCAA transfer portal with USC as a possible transfer destination. What are the ramifications? Let's start off with Bruce Bagney. You're a newcomer. I know this is breaking news, but your thoughts on it?
Well, first of all, I want to know whether this is college football or musical chairs. It's hard to keep up, without a roster of all people in the portal, et cetera. I think it's very interesting. Obviously the implications for Jackson Dart. I think if he comes our way, it's very significant. You guys, I haven't been watching Oklahoma play, so you guys can maybe comment on how good this guy is. I understand he's very good. But I've got a real preference for Jackson Dart too. And so I guess my biggest issue on it is it might be the best for us in the long run. I don't know. But in the meantime, I think it's going to cause if he comes our way, it's going to raise a lot of questions and raise a lot of concerns.
All right. Well, okay. Thank you, Bruce. Mark, you got a lot of concerns or not? How do you see it?
So are we just ready to admit that college football is no longer college football? It's free agency. It's the NFL. Because that's what it's come down to. You literally have someone who is considered, a Heisman front runner next year. Had a very successful season at Oklahoma. And I understand that his former head coach is now at USC. But, this guy is going to be in command of anywhere from $1 to $2 million on the open market. And someone, when I say someone, a school is going to be paying that. So whether he comes to USC because he wants to be coached by Lincoln Riley and he wants to get to the NFL, we'll wait and see. I'm of the opinion that pretty much everybody who goes into the portal, if you're a 4 or 5-star player and you're jumping into the portal after 1 or 2 years at a university, you're jumping in it for the money. So to Bruce's point, yeah, if he does come to USC, you do have to watch the the depth chart Jackson Dart, Miller Moss. But, do you bring them in and say, hey, look, we now got 3 4-star, 5-star guys, whatever you want to classify them as, and say, get out there and compete. We saw that Lincoln was not shy about benching Spencer Rattler, putting in Caleb Williams. So, I don't know. Am I concerned? No, I see it for what it is. Regardless, you're just going to have Bruce said it again, you're going to have a carousel of players just moving around from team to team.
All right, Chris Arledge, let us know your point of view.
I actually disagree with Mark on a couple of things.
Cool.
First of all, I don't think it's the case that the school will be paying this. It's not going to be the school. It's going to be somebody who loves that school's football program. There's going to be a booster somewhere that's paying it. And I think that's an important thing to consider. Well, no, it's important, and here's why. I don't believe for a second that Caleb Williams is leaving Oklahoma for the money, because I guarantee there's an oil man or a used car dealer or something in Norman, Oklahoma that would find his buddies and write a gigantic check to keep Caleb Williams. It's not like Oklahoma would be unwilling to pay players. I don't think that's what it is at all. I think that Caleb Williams can make a lot of money wherever he goes. But Caleb Williams knows that the difference between becoming a Heisman Trophy winner and a top 3 pick in the NFL draft and not doing those things is enormous. The value of winning the Heisman Trophy would be bigger dollars for the rest of his career. And if he has a great run the next 2 years and he goes number 1 overall, that's a career changing thing, as opposed to falling to late in the first round or early in the second. And so I think if I'm Caleb Williams, what I'm most concerned about right now is I went to Oklahoma because I wanted to play for the quarterback guru, the guy that I was convinced could make me the next Kyler Murray. And now I don't have that. Now, it doesn't mean he's going to pick USC. He may go somewhere else, but the chatter on the internet about, maybe he's going to take Georgia because Georgia's going to offer him a bunch of money strikes me as absurd. Why would he go to Georgia? Georgia's terrible with their quarterbacks. Absolutely terrible. He win a lot of football games. There's no question. But Caleb Williams doesn't want to go somewhere where he's going to be coached by a mediocre quarterback coach in an offense that doesn't use their quarterback very well, so he can go 13-0. I'll tell you right now, if Caleb Williams could go 11-2 and be tutored by somebody who's going to turn him into the number 1 pick in the NFL draft, he'd take that in a second over going 13-0. It's a business decision.
So why doesn't Jeff Lebby and Matt Corral at Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin fall into that category? Do
you consider Levy to be in the same class as Lincoln Riley in terms of a proven developer of quarterbacks? He had one guy that had a good year. He hasn't 3 straight guys who are Heisman finalists, 2 who are number 1 overall picks.
I'm not necessarily arguing against you. I'm just using one of the points you brought up as he's not like walking into chopped liver. It's not like T. Martin's taking over the offense.
No, fair enough. I mean, having that quarterback coach and offensive coordinator is not T. Martin. It's not Graham Harrell. It's not a disaster. We're on the same page. But does he consider him to be the top guy? Because I'll tell you right now, Caleb Williams considers himself to be the most talented quarterback in the country. That's what he thinks. And you know what? He may be right. He certainly was. He was comfortable going and competing with Spencer Rattler when Rattler was already supposed to be a preseason Heisman candidate, right? And Caleb Williams walks into that situation and says, I'll beat that guy out. I'm better than that guy. Caleb Williams is not worried about Jackson Dart. He's not worried about Miller Moss. He's worried about one thing. He wants to find the very best situation to develop him into being the next Kyler Murray. Who's the best bet to develop you into the next Kyler Murray? I think the guy who developed the last Kyler Murray and has 3 straight guys that were college superstars and 3 guys who are NFL starters. I'd take that guy too. So I don't know where he's going to go. I know nothing about Caleb Williams, but I'd be surprised if he went to a place like Georgia. I think he's going to play for Lincoln Riley because he knows Lincoln Riley will make him into a superstar. And he's right. Lincoln will do that. He'll win the Heisman at USC if he comes.
Well, I think that all of you have made some very good points. I'm going to merge the idea of branding with a player. Caleb Williams knows if he comes to USC, He's going to be in one of the most visible markets in America, if not the most visible. All the trimmings that go along with being a USC quarterback, Hollywood, all of it. It's overwhelming that when you do take a look at if you were the quarterback of Georgia, just from a marketing standpoint and USC, it's a no-brainer. He's coming here. I think that it's not the college football that we all grew up with, kind of the Pollyanna look at it, but it is basically an NFL model in some ways with free agency. And what are they going to do for me to get me where I want to go? I'm going to go out on the limb and say he's coming to USC. There is talk that he could return if he wanted to Oklahoma, which I think is absurd. I think once a player of that stature puts his name out there, this is, I mean, if you really take a look at all the warning signs, if you're a Sooner fan, that you can see this one. And if you look back and he does come to SC, you'll say, well, of course, the roadmap was already there. And I think that Chris's point is very well taken, that he knows that Lincoln Riley is going to be his coach. He knows the system already. The question I always have is, how will that affect USC's team morale and culture? Well, Lincoln Riley is doing, in my opinion, a great job of getting rid of all the bad culture. And look at, there's only one thing that SC fans want, and I think I can speak for them. They want a national championship. They want to be in the same breath as they once were with the great powers that are currently Alabama and Georgia. And they know that if Caleb Williams comes here, let's face it, if Caleb Williams comes here, with all due respect to the other quarterbacks on campus, he's going to be the starting quarterback. He's not coming here to sit down. And since he knows the system, he'll look so much better in spring practice. The question is, can they give him an offensive line? That would be true of the other quarterbacks. So this is something we're going to have to pay attention to. We're going to watch, and none of us are going to be shocked if Caleb Williams goes to USC. But I will say this, our viewership, which was over 10,000 last week, will zoom up even higher because I'm sure the Oklahoma fans will be tuning in by the bunches to hear what we have to say. And I do have some compassion for them. So that being said,
That's because you don't know many of them, Greg. Hey, by the way, this is also an important test of Lincoln Riley's program, right? Let's assume for a second that Caleb Williams really does want to be coached by the best guy around and that he believes it's Lincoln Riley. But let's also assume that he's not willing to leave $2 million on the table. Lincoln Riley now has to prove that he can compete with the other football powers. I mean, Alabama's quarterback got $1 million before he played it down. Turns out the kid was worth it, but I mean, he wasn't the starter there when he got $1 million deal. If Lincoln Riley can't find a way to get Caleb Williams $2 million in endorsement money in order to come to USC, then he's failing as a coach. Whether we like it or not, he's failing. And if he gets Caleb Williams, then everybody in the country, even more than they already were, is going to look at USC and say, whoa, that is a completely different place than it was 12 years ago. That place is going to challenge Alabama in 2 years. That's what they're going to think.
And actually, to be honest with you, that's what they should think, because what USC can provide is like what nobody else can provide, and that is high intensity exposure, and in this day and age, to make money. Well, we're going to move on to the second quarter because that was a good transition. And the second quarter basically is, it appears that one of the two vacant coaching positions has apparently been filled with former Utah running backs coach Kyle McDonald. McDonald has a good track record within the industry of developing running backs, and certainly they've done a great job at Utah. But Riley still has one big opening at defensive line coach after Jamar Cain departed for LSU and new head coach Brian Kelly. So the question I have, guys, is what do you make of these coaches coming to USC, staying for a week, and then going somewhere else? We have heard no official announcement on any of the coaching staff. And, I think that is something that, I think, Chris, you hit on the fact of, come to USC if you're Caleb Williams. But what about the fact that, if they don't start getting people along the offensive line to start coming to USC, and we know SC is going to always recruit quarterbacks and skill position players, but they desperately need offensive and defensive line help. What is this current situation doing with the February signing period? Really only about 4 weeks away. So let's start off there. We'll talk let me see how I want to do this so that I get everybody a fair shot. All right, we'll start off with Bruce. What do you think about this?
Well, it's just astounding to me. As a lawyer, and Chris can attest to this, I mean, usually when you think about these situations, you usually think people are under contract and the terms have been agreed to. And now I presume that these people who have, represented themselves as SC coaches and have been suddenly bolted to the greener pastures. I presume they have contracts. Maybe they had minimal buyout provisions. I don't know. But it is, to me, it's the revolving door, it's the musical chairs. But I think it's also a reflection of where we are now in college football. I think we've gone from the team concept, the individual concept. I think we're moving that way more each day. It's all about me individually. What can you do for me? If I don't start at quarterback, I'm going in the portal. I'm not going to stay back and compete. I'm leaving. Same with these coaches. I'm puzzled by it, and I think it really does help us in the recruiting. And my biggest concern as an old school SC guy, now old school football guy, is I want an offensive line that's big and tough and strong that can block. And I want tough defensive guys along the line of scrimmage. And if we don't get those guys, we're just going to be a glorified, a glorified example, if you will, of this new football, the sideways passing and everything else. If we don't get back to power football with big, strong, tough guys, we're never going to get to the next level. And this bothers me because everything's up in the air like this. How do you bring in the big guys? I don't know.
Chris, does it bother you on how this coaching situation is evolving? It seems like, Lincoln Riley had to get to his third pick on the offensive line. Oh my goodness. Excuse me 1 second. It's a bulletin from the warden. I'll be prolonging my probation here for a moment. That was really good, wasn't it?
That's very good.
The one time I didn't silence my phone.
Very agile.
Well, you have to be quick on your feet. Chris, what do you think make of all this situation here with the coaching?
Well, look, if the guy from A&M was the third choice for the O-line coach, then it's hard to feel bad about that third choice, right? I mean, this guy, Henson's a superstar. Fine. He didn't get Bedenbaugh. He gets Henson, who is a fantastic recruiter and by all accounts a very good offensive line coach. I can live with that. I think the running back coach, he wasn't the first choice, but seems like a pretty good fit. I suspect he'll hire a solid defensive line coach too. I'm not that worried about it. The reality is that it's going to be hard to make a major push with this recruiting class along the D line anyway. Because most of the top guys have already committed. There are a couple guys out there, maybe they'll get lucky. But so 2 other points. If I'm a head coach, I want assistant coaches that I'm going to have to fight to keep. Now, I don't want them necessarily to leave after 3 days, but I want guys that I want to fight to keep. And when I hire them, I'm going to tell them, I'm going to help you get your next job. I'm going to help you get your next promotion to a coordinator, to a head coach position. That's what I'm going to do for you. Those are the guys you want. There are only so many guys like Brent Venables who stick around as coordinators for 20 years, even though they have other opportunities. Most of these guys want to move up. So the idea that you're going to have a relatively small buyout for your assistant coaches strikes me as exactly what you should have with your assistant coaches. I want guys who are ambitious and talented, who everybody else in the country wants, and I know I'm going to lose them. Nick Saban loses his assistants every single year. He's doing all right. So I'm not worried about losing the assistants. I'm not that worried that it's taken him a while to hire the defensive line coach. He'll hire one and he'll be good. I will say this, the front seven next year is the single biggest question mark on the team, and it's an enormous question mark. I think the offensive line is going to be fine. I mean, if there are not a huge number of injuries, the offensive line is going to be fine. We have a lot of returning guys who showed a great deal of improvement last year, and that was operating in Graham Harrell's horrific offense for a lousy offensive coordinator. It was a lousy offensive coordinator with a ridiculous system. Lincoln Riley, with or without Caleb Williams, is going to score a lot of points next year. He's going to. The offensive line is fine. The question is whether USC will be able to stop anybody, because there's so little talent in the front seven. And so he's going to have to solve that through the transfer portal if he wants to win next year. But having the defensive line coach locked up a week ago wasn't really going to change that anyway. So I'm not worried about it. I think it'll be fine. I like the way the staff is coming together, and I bet we'll hear about the D-line coach within the next day or two, now that everybody's done playing.
Mark Culkin, are you comfortable with what you're seeing?
Yeah, well, it just goes back to my earlier point. It's all about money. I mean, losing Jamar Cain to LSU, it's a lateral move. He went from being USC's defensive line coach for, 3 days, however long it was, to being LSU's defensive line coach / resume defensive coordinator, whatever, title they gave him. So bottom line is it's coming down to, is USC offering enough to coach with Lincoln Riley in Los Angeles? Because it costs a lot to live out here. That's part of that's part of it. $4.50 a gallon of gas here is, $2.99 in Baton Rouge. So money makes a difference. So being able to pull, Kyle McDonald from Utah by doubling his salary is an easy pull. He was making, bupkis in Utah, but to double bupkis in LA is still, 500, 600, 750,000 per year. That's a good contract for a running back coach, especially one as young as he is. So I don't know if it's a concern. It's a matter of, we keep hearing USC's ready to play big boy football again. Well, you're going to have to pay big boy prices to get the coaches. Otherwise, these assistant coaches that are moving from job to job, yeah, I agree with Chris. You want coaches that other teams want, but if they're going to go for an extra $250,000, they're not really the coach. Are they really the coach the other teams want? It's a money play right now. I've got nothing else to add to it because the game is out of control.
Well, be that as it may, again, some good points here, but I am concerned about it, and I'm concerned about it from a stability standpoint, a perception standpoint. And really, I think USC has to start and get a foundation of defense and offensive linemen. I'm not quite in agreement with Chris in my excitement about the offensive line. I know that Lincoln Riley's going to want to pull guards. He's going to want to pull tackles. You want to pull tight ends. And it remains to be seen whether those players are athletic enough that we have right now that can do that. My concern is that they need to begin a foundation. When you don't have a defensive line coach, how do you sell defensive line to even portal transfers? Look at, we'll get you a good coach. Nobody in their right mind is going to say, okay, Lincoln, I'm signing up for somebody I don't know. Case in point, you look at the recent Under Armour All-Star game, and one of the star running backs, Mark, help me out on this because I know you know the name of the running back that signed with, said he's going to Oklahoma.
Javonte Barnes.
Yeah, Javonte Barnes. I know that Javonte Barnes was very attached to the running back coach at Oklahoma, and it does still make a difference who your position coach is going to be. And I think that SC has to show that they have a position coach. We only have 4 weeks left, give or take a couple of days, with the February signing period. They've got to get some bodies that are quality, not just bodies, but quality bodies. And I am concerned about going into the portal I don't believe the portal is the answer. I don't think Lincoln Riley believes it's the answer. It's a quick fix if you already have a solid roster. So I am concerned about getting the staff, in play so that they can get those players that are still available that could really help them. To me, it's a loose end that I think would be best served if they would just be able to get the right person. I don't understand why we have to wait to announce them all at the same time officially. And we're the guys that were working. We're the guys that were here for a week. Did they not sign a contract? Were they just kind of like, well, why don't you come visit and see how you like it? And if you don't, you want to go on to LSU and they'll pay you $300,000 more. We get it, but we're not going to pay that. It just conjures up to me a number of questions. Yes, Mark, go ahead.
I wanted to bring up a different point, and you kind of helped me out here. George Kliavkoff, the commissioner, kind of gave his State of the Union address, kind of recapped what he saw over the past year from the Pac-12 conference. Something that he noticed was the size differential between the guys in the trenches in the Pac-12 and around the country. So are those particular types of coaches, the offensive line and defensive line coaches, are they looking at the Pac-12 as like, you know what, am I going to be able to get those types of guys that the commissioner's talking about without a little
Phone
money?
call?
So again, that just something else to take into consideration why, we might be having some trouble with those coaching hires at those particular positions.
No, I think that's a good point, Mark. And I'll tell you why. I think that the number of players in my world of growing up in Southern California, I have watched the quantity of that diminishing for offense and defensive linemen on the West Coast in general. Okay. And that's a whole different segment. But the point is that I think that USC does not have the, not that they don't have the ability, they don't have the
allure
players. No, not the allure. The players on the West Coast. Like you go to the Southeast Conference, you could find 25 guys. Maybe on the West Coast, you'll hear about the same 3 or 4 guys. And if those 3 or 4 guys go to the outside of the Pac-12, what we get is basically the Mountain West Conference in the Pac-12. So I understand where it's coming from. I hope that this can be all rectified by getting coaches. I will say this. You get quality coaches that come from Oklahoma, they're going to be able to go into Texas. They're going to be able to go anywhere in the Midwest. I don't think it's going to hurt SC's recruiting. Plus, I think SC's recruiting is helped by the NIL marketing for Southern California. So it's something that we'll have to see how it plays out. And let's move on to halftime, which we're talking about assistant coaches. I think this is a real interesting one. Panel, based on the opening at defensive line coach, do you think that Lincoln Riley should put in a call to Ed Ogeron and make him the defensive line coach and recruiting coordinator? What do you think, Mark?
If you could put all of his baggage aside and just take Coach O, absolutely. But there's a lot of luggage that's coming with Coach Yaya. And I don't know if USC is willing to step into that quagmire. So I'll just leave it there. Everything else, he's the coach you want. He's going to fire guys up. He's going to recruit. But man, if you believe some of the stuff that was going on with him, he's going to need a sabbatical from football for a while. Him and Urban Meyer need to go hang out on a boat somewhere else for a while.
Well, I think I can read between the lines on that one. Chris, what's between your lines?
Yeah, no, I actually agree with Mark. I don't know what was going on with Edo at LSU. I hear rumors. I don't know what to make of them. I'll say this, even apart from that, the idea that he would want to go from college head coach at a blue blood program where he's won a national title recently and move halfway across the country to coach defensive line strikes me as quite unlikely. Almost not quite as unlikely, but almost as unlikely as saying we should see if Urban Meyer wants to be the offensive coordinator. I mean, I just don't, he's not showing up to be the defensive line coach. That being said, as most Trojans, I love Ed O. And his time coaching under Pete Carroll was fantastic. He was not only a great coach, but a really remarkable personality and just an interesting guy. So if they hired him, would I be upset? I would not, but I'm not sure it makes sense, and I don't think it makes sense for either party.
How about you, Bruce? Does it make
Well,
sense to you?
It would, but for the reasons that Chris just stated, it's very unlikely. But let me add another reason to that. I know him, and I know Brian Kennedy, by the way, very well. He's a good friend, and he was very close with Ed O. Ed O was hurt very badly by what happened to him at SC. The way he was treated by our athletic director. And with Sarkey, I guess it was Sarkey gig, and those were deep wounds, and plus he's a Louisiana boy. I would be shocked if Edo go. Let me comment on another point here that I think is really important, and guys, I'm interested how you feel about this. I'm looking somehow for some connection on this team, on this coaching staff, to back to when we played SC football. And I would really love somebody on the staff, whether it's Ed O or Kenichi Udeze or Patterson or one of those guys, Odie, somebody who played when we actually played football and SC, played real defense, provide that kind of continuous link. So I guess my bias would be, can we find somebody like Nielsen? I don't know what Nielsen's doing now. Nielsen, but he was a real tough guy, defensive tackle. But you see what I'm saying? I think we need some connection back because we do the sideways passing. We don't play defense. Now I'm hoping that's all going to improve. That Lincoln Riley will fix a lot of that. But it would sure be nice to be able to inject some of the old fire and some of the old culture into what we're trying to do going forward.
Well, I will get back to the original question. I think the thing about Ed is, one, he doesn't need the money. Okay. He's already been a head coach. He's already won a national championship. He's no longer married. So it's not like he owes, if anything, a lot of people say, I'm getting out of where I'm at because there's just too many bad memories here. I could actually see him coming to USC on a coaching standpoint to say, you know what, leaving out, Pat Hayden and the disaster, how that was treated. By and large, most of the people that I know at USC, I loved USC. I liked the people, they liked me. If he returned, I don't know whether Lincoln Riley would feel comfortable with that idea, but I don't think that that's a problem. I think the problem is he's got those legal issues that are staring him in the face that could come back during the season when he's coaching or in the off season. And to be honest with you, I've been as critical as anybody else with Carol Folt. But if you're going to try to get people and say we don't want people that have a sordid past, so to speak, certainly Urban Meyer still does. Why would you want to take a step back into that pool? So from a coaching standpoint, no question, I would take Ed Orgeron in a heartbeat. I think he'd do a great job. I think he'd be happy to be coaching. That's what he does. I think coming back to SC would not be a problem. Yes, he was hurt badly, but not by the people who are still with the university. So with that in mind, I don't think it's going to happen, but it's certainly an interesting concept nonetheless. All right, let's get to the third quarter. Panel, what are your perspectives on players making their announcements on national television with the hats picking drama? Has it gotten out of control in today's recruiting process, especially now where the NIL is becoming such a major force in players marketing themselves? Are you kind of sick of the way it's being done? Players are signing, but then I don't announce it until I'm on TV. Bruce, I know you're old school and probably have some thoughts on this. What do you think about these players doing what they're doing right now, making these announcements?
Well, I think it's just another example of how the emphasis is now on the individual. Instant gratification. It's about meeting your own individual need versus being on a team. I sometimes I ask whether or not is college football the triple A for NFL or is it college football? I don't hear any. By the way, I don't hear any of these kids, by the way, anymore talking about getting the great education. You don't hear that very much. You don't. And I'm just concerned, and I know I'm a Pollyanna about this, and I know the days are over, but there's too much emphasis on the individual. Can I just throw out a quick anecdote here that I think I ask you whether or not this would ever happen today. UCLA had the greatest basketball coach ever, Don Wood, maybe the greatest coach of any college sport ever. He had a guy who was a player by the name of Bill Walton. And Bill Walton showed up in the preseason. He had long hair and he had a beard. And Johnny Wooden looked at him. He said, "Bill, it's been a real pleasure having you on the team. But my guys don't have long hair and beards. So have a nice life." Now, just can you imagine that conversation happening today? Anyway, I rest my case.
Well, as a former federal prosecutor, I like the way you presented that and resting your case. That was nice. Mark, what do you think? You're into the recruiting heavily. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, the hat picking, hat tossing thing has been going on for well over a decade. I don't think that doesn't bother me. It's just the way the whole process has been developing since then. Before we had one signing day, now you've got the early signing period, and then you have National Letter of Intent Day in February, which used to be the holy grail, the holiday of recruiting season, and now it's an afterthought. It's the Rose Bowl, believe it or not. It's like it's not the college football playoffs, so it doesn't really matter anymore. I'm being sarcastic for anybody who's not sure. So I have no problem with the hat picking. Where the issue lies is what's going on behind the scenes. It's like, hey, my hat is worth this much now. Your hat is worth that much. Fill it up. And I think we just need to get used to that, because until there is a commissioner, because the NCAA's got no control of the situation. So until there's a commissioner that can just grab a hold of college football and lasso it and say, look, everyone said that the players should get paid. Great, you're getting paid. But they shouldn't be making more money than school presidents before they played a down of college football. I think, Chris, you mentioned it earlier. Bryce Young was making $1 million before he took a snap. That's how recruiting is now. It has nothing to do with the hats anymore.
All right. So since you brought up the name of Chris Arledge, Chris, is it out of control, or can it be fixed, or does it need to be fixed?
I was curious how much money went in Bill Walton's hat.
Oh, that was
Sam Gilbert will only know that.
Well, look, I mean, because guys, you're fighting against cultural trends that have been in place for a long time, and you're talking about the grand old days that never existed. People were getting paid 40 years ago. They were getting paid 40 years ago. It's just, it was illegal then. Because when you have a market, and when you try to restrict the market, what you get is a black market. And that's what was going on forever. Look, the hat thing, who cares? We're 15 years late in answering that question. That's been happening forever. It doesn't matter. And look, it's not just a I mean, some of the kids make a silly display of it and they pretend to put it on one hat, put on another, whatever. 18-year-old kids are stupid. Anybody who knows a lot of 18-year-old kids knows that 18-year-old kids are stupid. So you would expect that to happen. It's no big deal. But look, there's something of value to this announcement thing. It's not just a look at me situation. It's sort of like high school graduation in a sense, that this is an opportunity to celebrate accomplishments or milestones. Is it good for the player to get on TV? Yes. But you notice mom and dad are there and brothers and sisters are there. The high school coach is there. At most schools, maybe not modern day where everybody goes Division I that ever puts on the uniform, but at a lot of schools, it's a big deal when you have a guy who gets recruited by Michigan and Ohio State and USC and Notre Dame. That's a big deal. It's a big deal for the program. It's a big deal for the school. It's a source of pride for the community. Why shouldn't they have something to celebrate that day for? I've got no problem with it at all. And I kind of like the announcement videos more. I think that's a little bit more up to date and a little bit more interesting. Sometimes you learn something about the kids, but I don't have a problem with any of that. And would John Wooden be able to pull that trick today? The answer, Bruce, is no. But if John Wooden tried to pull that trick today, we wouldn't even know John Wooden's name anymore because he doesn't. This is not the late 1960s. He lost that cultural battle. He lost. It's over. The world is a different world than it was then. So we either adjust and make do in the world we're in, or we wish that we lived in a world 50 years ago that probably didn't even exist 50 years ago.
And let's be honest, Sam was the bag man back then anyway. So let's just.
That's the rumor.
Sam Gilbert.
Well, I will chime and wrap this particular quarter up by saying I think they've taken it to a whole new level, and it's really the meaning of it, not necessarily the production of it. The hats, I don't have a real problem with that. When I used to watch those announcements with the hats, generally most of us already knew where they were going, so it was kind of anticlimactic. I remember our late publisher Gary Paskowitz would call me and say, well, he's not coming. So I didn't have any depression and anxiety watching it. I was more interested in the theatrics of, I know where you're going, just see how you do it. And, the family would put in, they'd be wearing their clothes underneath their clothes, with the school logos, and okay, they're having fun with it. To me, I didn't have a problem. They're having fun with it. Where it is today, I'm going to disagree with Arledge here. I don't like the image of productions and value of, how slick can I make my announcement, because it goes back to me and it goes back to where we are. And Chris could argue successfully against me by saying that's just where we are today. Okay, I'd have no debate with that. But when you're talking about nowadays, I was watching the Under Armour game, and they're revealing their choices. I didn't see happiness when I saw the guys revealing who they're going with and their parents. What I saw was dollar signs. I saw NIL marketing myself dollar signs. And I think SC is a culprit in this by the way they market the players that sign. They're branding them into individual superstars. And then there's the complaint, we don't play like a team. Well, you build up these players and say, they're coming in a Rolls Royce. They're stepping out in front of the Hollywood sign. It's contributing to the problem. If the players on their own want to go and they want to play the hat game, good, fine. I don't have a problem with it. You want to do it on the All-Star games like the old U.S. Army game, good. But when the school itself is competing to make them, I think Chris made the point, they haven't proven anything in college. Yet you're making them all ready to be superstars. And if they don't get that gratification after their first year, it's off to the portal we go. There's going to be some point where there is no backup quarterback. There'll be walk-on quarterbacks because they're all going to say, I'm not getting, my brand name isn't out there. I'll never get drafted. I got to go somewhere. I'll go to the Occidental College. I don't care. But I don't like this individualism. I've never liked it. I think it's okay. Draw a hat, put it on. If it says USC, I'm happy. But let's not roll out videos on the boulevard. maybe I'm, Bruce Bagney old school on that. I have no problem with that, but I think it's gotten out of hand personally, and I think it's too bad, but it is what it is. So with that in mind, pardon me, we're going to the fourth quarter, and again, we're going to light the traditional torch here. Bruce, I know this is something new to you, but we try to be a little bit symbolic here going into the fourth quarter at the Coliseum. I don't know how many of you can really see that this top part here of the candlestick that I have, those of you that are
Greg, don't do that.
listening. Yes,
Don't do that. Look
this is the key. Okay.
at.
I'm
It's
not,
a remarkable likeness.
I'm not gonna go there.
But just take your word for it, Greg. It's a remarkable likeness.
Well, you see, when you come to watch Inside the Trojans Huddle, you never know it's going to come out. So with the torch lit symbolically, look at all four of us have been season ticket holders for USC football at one time or another. We know that. Okay. So I'm going to ask you guys your prediction on the increase of the number of season tickets for 2022. Do you think that former season ticket holders will or should jump back on the Cardinal and Gold bandwagon now that Lincoln Riley is the new head coach? Chris, you're out there in Dallas. You willing to fly in for home games now?
Maybe not all of them, but I'm going to fly. I'm going to fly in for more than I did the last couple of years, and I'm going to be there for the opener. I think a lot of people want to be there for the opener. I think there's a sense of excitement that there hasn't been for USC football in a long time. Certainly when Pete Carroll was hired, we had no reason to believe that we were about to see what we saw. And so I remember going to that San Jose State game, and it was still probably 45,000 people, and the team was unimpressive. And it was, maybe a 21-10 game, a relatively unexciting game. But I think Lincoln Riley changes the equation a little bit. I think people are going to be excited. I think people are going to want to go to the games. Now, that won't last if the early excitement gives way to mediocre play the rest of the year. But yeah, I want to be there to see his first game. I do. So I'll fly in for that. And what's more, I will fly in without feeling guilty, because previously I would feel guilty going to the games knowing that I'm supporting a regime and decision-making that I found repulsive. And so I'd go, but I wouldn't feel good about myself. Now I can go and feel good about myself.
All right. Well, it's good to know that you're feeling good about yourself. Would you feel good enough about yourself, Mark, that you would, if you had the opportunity, you would go and do the season ticket thing all over again if you weren't writing for WeRSC and sitting in the press box?
Of course, but I was part of that Thundering Herd standing room only section, so I would probably put a stipulation that they've got to recreate that type of environment. But I agree with Chris. I think the Coliseum game 1 versus Rice is going to be pretty close to sold out, just because of the newness. People are going to see the new toy unwrapped. And once Lincoln Riley was named the head coach, you had people already coming out of the woodwork saying that they were going to kind of renew season tickets, the ones they had given up. I had a friend who facetiously said he was, not going to move to Portugal anymore, and he's going to buy a pair of season tickets. He lives out there, on the East Coast. I anticipate, anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 additional season seats being sold for this upcoming season. So if that can get USC to, 55 to 60,000 per game, and as long as they're winning, that number will always go up. Yeah, I think you're going to see an uptick in 2022. Just because, Chris mentioned it. It's new. It's Lincoln Riley. Let's go see what he can do.
Bruce, you're out there in Jacksonville, Florida tonight.
Yes,
and I know that when you come to USC games, that's a trip. It's an event. And I know that you were disgusted and discouraged by what's been happening, and making those trips became less and less exciting to the point where you go, if I don't go to a game or I don't watch an entire game, I'm not feeling bad about it. Do you feel right now that you're going to attend more games, and are you going to get season tickets? What you doing?
Well, I think I probably will. And you know, Chris comes from Dallas. I'm coming about twice as far. I did it for a long time. You know, it's a big deal. You know, it costs a lot of money and it takes a lot of time and so forth. But I have been so down and so discouraged for so long that I'm seeing a chance for a whole new life. And so, yeah, I want to be part of it. In all likelihood, I'll get season tickets. If I don't make the games, I'll give the tickets to people I know or whatever. A lot of friends out there, but yeah, I think I'm going to do it, and I do think that we might see a sellout. I think it's going to be a real thing. And look, if nothing else with this guy, Lincoln Riley, would I rather, I'm old school again, I'd rather be playing under center and having a fullback and running 23 blast and all that stuff, or at least more than one running ball this idiot ran. I think Chris but you know what? This is an exciting time for me. I'm 77. I've been an SC fan since John Arnett, 1956, and been through all the ups and downs. And I'm starting to feel the chance for a renaissance here. So yeah, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to bite the bullet, spend the time, spend the money, and I think this guy, no matter what, is going to be exciting. It may not be the kind of football that I want or that some of you guys want, but he's going to score a lot of points, and it's going to be fun to watch. And we're not going to be the laughingstock. We have, for the last number of years, Kelton talking about, well, we're going to win the Pac-12 South. What the hell? This guy's coming in saying we're going to win the national championship, and that's his goal. And I think he'll get there. So I'm excited, and I'm all in.
Hey, you know what's worse? You know what's worse than saying, "Hey, we're going to win the Pac-12 South," which is embarrassing if you're USC. Not winning the Pac-12 South.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Which is what Clay managed to do most of the time. Now I don't know what division he's trying to win now, but just wait. Right. 3 years. That guy's looking for work again.
Well, that whole thing, he belongs in Georgia. Trust me, with those crackers in South Georgia. Okay, that's where he belongs.
Well, I will say
Gomer Pyle. That's where he belongs.
I will say this, maybe when they redo schedules, because they talk about fixing the schedules, you want to sell out? Open up the season against Georgia Southern in the Coliseum between Clay Helton and Lincoln Riley. That'll guarantee you a sellout, probably even a national television audience. No, I think as long as SC shows progress, look at, they were 4-8 last season. That's pretty pathetic.
Yes.
And winning a division title is meaningless to me. I wouldn't put on a t-shirt, let alone underpants, and say, South Division champions. I think if they go from 4-8 and they can make it a reasonable drive at 8-4, maybe if they were lucky beyond luck and got to 9-3, which I don't expect. But if they got to 8-4 and the losses aren't, you wouldn't sit there and say, well, they lost to Notre Dame. How could we do that? If people see, let's remember that Pete Carroll was 6-6 his first season at USC, lost to Utah in the Las Vegas Bowl. And to me, people will keep coming if they continue to see hope and improvement. SC fans are really knowledgeable. They're not stupid. A lot of the people that have followed USC, amongst the four of us, have been doing it for decades and decades. We've been through the highs and the lows. You're not going to sneak anything past us. You're not going to listen to Clay Helton tell you, we're going to be great in November. Wait till you see this team. And most of us are rolling their eyes and wondering, God, I don't even want to see what's going to happen in November. Of course, Clay would be looking at the schedule going, look at all the teams that are, we're going to face the 10, 11, and 12th place teams, and we're going to look good. And I'm going to say, see, we're showing improvement. I think that in the end, fans will come back. I don't think they're going to come back immediately on a consistent basis, but they'll come back. And if they really get off to a good roll there, I mean, there's going to be some players that fans are going to see. They're going to want to see Rayleigh Brown and the way he's used, because he is an exciting person. He'll bring you out of your seats in a split second. So I see it as a chance to begin the process of coming back to what we all want USC to be. So that'll take us into overtime. And because we tape on a Monday, we will not be able to comment on the national championship game next Monday night, but we can make a prediction on what we think is going to happen when Alabama and Georgia do their rematch. So let's ask the panel here what you think, and we'll begin with Mark Culkin. What are you seeing for the Alabama-Georgia rematch? Who's going to be the national champion?
You know what? Until further notice, Nick Saban is going to get my vote. I don't care how loaded this Georgia team is, how well this team plays defense. They tried that once and they were embarrassed. I think it'll be closer, but I think, again, you give Nick Saban enough time to game plan. He's got the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback who, he sees the field so well that when he sees something covered up, he's already directing his guys where to go when the play is still in its developmental stage. So when you've got that kind of, IQ behind center, plus you're going to be a sound defensive team as it is, just being a Saban coach team. Yeah. Give them another ring and let's just call it a day and move forward.
Chris, are you ready to call it a day? Or are you going to sit there and say, I think Georgia will put on its really big boy pants and pull an upset? What do you think?
No, Alabama's going to beat them. You don't make money betting against Nick Saban, number one. And Saban has owned Georgia and Kirby. I don't think that's going to change for two reasons. I think there are two fundamental flaws with this Georgia team. It's a great Georgia team. There are two fundamental flaws. I don't think they're that great in the secondary. And you have to be pretty good in the secondary to beat Alabama with this quarterback and those wideouts. And there are so many of them. I mean, every year it's just a new first-round pick. When Georgia's playing teams that like to run the ball off tackle, Georgia shuts them down. And Georgia played a lot of teams like that this year. But Kirby had told one of the sideline reporters before that first Alabama game, I don't know if we're as good in the secondary as we were last year. Well, they're not. And so Alabama's going to score some points. And in a battle between Alabama with its Heisman winning quarterback and Stetson Bennett, who's going to bet on Bennett? That guy's mediocre at best. Georgia's not going to be able to just line up and run the ball at Alabama all day. They're not. And Nick Saban will force that quarterback to make plays, and he's going to make less than the Heisman Trophy winner. Alabama wins that game by 14 points.
Bruce, you're from SEC country. Are they going to win by 14 points?
Well, first of all, let me state that I hate the SEC. Okay. And grudgingly, I will give Alabama especially credit. Hey, there are a lot of mediocre teams in the SEC now. They lost 5 or 6 bowl games too. But, Alabama's at the top. Georgia, I think they're well coached. They play good defense. But look, Alabama's going to beat them. I wouldn't be surprised if it was at least maybe even more than 2 touchdowns. Oh. But the guy in this whole drama that I really feel bad for is JT Daniels. This guy, he's been hurt the whole year. He had COVID. He was in a COVID protocol last week, so he couldn't practice. Had they had JT at full strength, they'd have had this other guy is very mediocre. And but sorry to say, Alabama will continue to prevail.
Well, I think that the big key to the game is going to be JT Daniels, because if Stetson Bennett pulls another no-show or gets exposed as a former walk-on quarterback from Georgia, JT's going to get in the game. And what an incredible irony that would be if he got into the game and got hot. From a personal standpoint, I'd have no problem if he looked great and they won the national championship. I think it'd make for a great story. Another local Southern California guy, JT Daniels, former modern day quarterback, going against another former modern day quarterback in Bryce Young. I think it would make a marvelous story if I was writing it. But when it's all said and done, Alabama's going to win. And they're going to win because Georgia's going to come in with false confidence. They don't really believe it. They think they believe it, but they don't really believe it. And once Alabama starts to pull away, it's all going to come. The first game is going to come gushing back into their brain. And that's when Alabama has got you. I think the beauty of watching Alabama, I have no problem with Alabama until SC Strong Enough wins every national championship, because they cause attention to rosters and how talented you have to be and style of play, which means running the football and passing the ball. And that's what you have to do to win at the highest level. And none of the air raid is going to do it. It's never done it. It will never do it. And it's my hope that USC sees what Alabama's doing, which is basically what Pete Carroll was doing during his time period. I don't worship Alabama, but I do appreciate what they're doing and telling everyone once again from like a megaphone, this is how you win national championships. So I'm going to take Alabama. So it's 100% Alabama, and we'll look forward to seeing that rematch. And on that note, we'd like to thank our panelists, Chris and Mark and Bruce, for being with us. And so until next Tuesday, we again want to thank all of you. Hope you had a great New Year's. Continue reading wearesc.com, hopefully subscribing to us. And we'll come back next week with Inside the Trojans Huddle. And who knows, you never know what late breaking news there's going to be, because there's always something going on in the USC program. So until then, fight on, everybody.